Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Data has been considered as a silo, and we all know, which is not the case anymore. Data is the new oil, and if security is compartmentalized, it can actually never scale. So, what we really want is data should never be spilled anywhere. That has cost us huge amount of money in the past. Security engineers are becoming more and more buyers of software or users of software. Security engineers should join platforms which are engineering focused. And there is again line which is getting blurred where developers have been asked to take care of security. And we always say developers should take care of security. But what is the main aim? Developers trying to aim to release the new features as fast as possible, as soon as possible. But is that goal being met? Yes, absolutely. But then what we are trying to do is we are trying to force upon security on them, which is becoming security as a byproduct for it. But today we're going to be talking about how security is actually helping development teams. And we're going to be talking about how panel on shift left is helping people, or shift left is helping everyone in the organization to bring forth security. And today we have two special people with us, Prajal Kulkarni and Ankur Bhargav. About Prajal Kulkarni, he's a senior security architect currently working with Flipkart. He has been active member of null security community for the past 6 years in India. His areas of interest includes web mobile, and system security. He writes a security blog at prajalkulkarni.com. He's also the lead contributor at Project Code Vigilant, which is one prominent space in India and a project in India. Code Vigilant has disclosed over 200 plus vulnerabilities in various platforms like WordPress plugin and themes. In the past, he has disclosed several vulnerabilities in the core components of GLPI, Bug Genie, OwnCloud, etc. Now, talking about Ankur, he's been heading security with many years of experience in this field, taking care of mobile and REST API security, which is his forte. He has been speaking at many conferences in India, like KubeCon, Ground Zero, and NullCon on topics like PDF exploitation, mobile automation framework, Android security. He has also been providing trainings at NullCon, KubeCon in 2012-13 on Android security. He has also presented an Android security automation tool in Black Hat Europe in 2017 and Black Hat USA in 2018. Thank you so much, Prajal and Ankur, for joining me today. It's an honor and pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Vandana, for calling us.
Thank you, Vandana.
It's really a pleasure.
Yeah, I am so looking forward to our conversation today because I've been discussing with you, or I would say that I look up to you both when it comes to security community, because Indian security community has given a lot of inputs to all of us and trained us. So you two have been there for a very, very long time. So it's so amazing to see you both here.
Vice versa. It's something coming like this from you is quite a lot for us. And, it's honestly seeing you in this space grow to this level is also really, really a proud moment for at least, I can speak for Ankur as well, because all three of us know each other even outside our professional network. And it's really a proud moment for us to see you where you are right now. Really proud.
Thank you so much.
Same here, Vandana. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, to start the conversation, I would go with Ankur first, wherein Ankur, how has been your experience in DevSecOps shift or DevOps with security shift? Because it is not a very long time ago where we have started talking about DevOps, DevSecOps, and all of these terms. And there's always been a conflict between the different terms. So how has your experience been around it from a security perspective and taking care of the development teams?
Sure. I think when DevOps was introduced, I think the aim was to enable rapid feedback to developers and operations team, right? And this is what got developers and operations aligned. And I think since then we've started seeing a DevOps team separately, which takes care of the operations and developer related things, right? Which are responsible to build and basically taking care of the code, how it builds, how it ships to the production environment or various environments, right? So I think that was the main aim, where we have to enable rapid feedback to developers. And using security in DevOps that has helped us in a similar manner, right? Because security was, at least in initial phases, it was very much down to after production, or probably while the build is ready. We used to basically look at pen testing, and pen testing was security. Like, this was the vice versa, which I've seen probably in my experience in last organizations. This was all it, right? Security is pen testing. Probably after DevSecOps, probably we have gotten mature. We have started shifting left. And with this, again, getting to the same point, we have started giving feedback to developers as soon as possible. And this is where DevSecOps has actually helped us reduce some sort of cost for security issues. We have started finding security issues much earlier in the process.
Right. Now, over to you, Prajal. I want to take your inputs on, like, how have you seen the shift in this particular model? Because as we discussed, like, no two organization can have the same DevSecOps model, and all of us have experienced it in a different way altogether. So how has your experience been?
Absolutely. I think Ankur covered the gist of it in a very nice way. Providing visibility to developers is one of the key factors in bringing the security philosophy of shift left. And that's what shift left does today in any organization, right? Be it a centralized model of DevOps or decentralized model of DevOps, your shift left philosophy remains pretty much the same for both the models here. For especially in my experience, I've seen providing security visibility to developers at a very early stage has given a lot of ROI. It has helped us save a lot of security vulnerabilities going to production. It has saved so many dollars for companies that I've worked for. And it has really, really accelerated the time to production for any developer teams that I've been part of in my career. So it has been a really, really game changer in the field of security.
Prajal, on the same lines, I have a question around, like, when you've seen it as a game changer, and security teams, they're taking care of many aspects, and now DevSecOps is becoming the key thing in an organization. And from your experience, how have you seen the relationships getting changed between different teams? And how have you handled from your past experience? Because relationships are key when we talk about DevOps, DevSecOps, and binding team together. So their maturity, they growing together is one key part. So how has your experience been with that?
Right. So I think I always believe in this philosophy that building a technology is much more simpler than maintaining security or relationships with your stakeholders and partners. To be honest, building a security culture in a company has been one of the most difficult and a daunting task for me. And most of my time goes in developing that kind of an environment or a culture within a company. Maintaining relationship with my stakeholders and my business partners has been gone so many folds, and so many experiences I've had. There is no cookbook, there is no silver bullet to this. There cannot be one way I can achieve a smooth relationship with one team versus another. It has been an experience where I have seen regular one-on-one connects with the developers, regular one-on-one connects with the managers, providing developer trainings to teams, maintaining that connect, a personal rapport rather, right, works beautifully. If we expect only tooling and process to keep our relationship alive with business partners, I don't see that working. So it's more of a human touch, and that is one of the most difficult things to achieve in security.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that when it comes to human touch, security is all scattered, and getting that together is a very, very big task. And in a lot of organizations, I've seen that the DevOps processes are very well aligned. However, when it comes to DevSecOps processes, they're always chunked down in various steps and not integrated into the single pipeline. So Ankur, this is a question for you. Like, how have you seen that getting along, and how has your experience been in working together with the teams where they're saying that, oh, we have DevSecOps, But this is where we are doing the secure code review. This is where we are doing the testing. And this is where we are going to do red teaming. But all of these things are there. Like everything is there, but that's all truncated.
I agree, and I think I'll add a few points which to Prajal in the last question, right? And those points are basically, this is my probably third startup in India in last 9 years, and the moment I shift to a company, I see that developers in QA specifically are very much aligned to each other, and this has never been. I've not seen this with security teams, most of the companies, right? And QA specifically is very much aligned with the process. And the reason is because the whole company, engineering team, product team, they actually think that QA are enablers for them. If we don't do QA properly, the product will break, the basic functionality will break, right? And for us to become such enablers, that takes time. And that's what Prajal mentioned, right? When you tell them what exactly we do, and we try and shift left, that's when we become not the blockers. Like when we do only pen test at the later stages of the cycle, we become blockers because there are some bugs which we cannot allow them to ship on production, right? And then that's when we delay releases. That's when a week or two delay happens in the releases, right? So when we shift left, we become more of an enabler, right? And that's when we have some sort of similar respect to what QA has for specifically product and business teams, right? And I think all that adding to points like security champions or SPOC programs where we have regular one-on-ones with teams and specific stakeholders where some senior or leads in the security team talk to higher organization leaders in the company, and junior folks might talk to developers or QAs directly, right? So that is very, very important. Yeah.
There is one thing which you really nicely mentioned about security advocate program or security champions program. So now you've been in the space for a very long time, and I can say that with your words that yes, you've set up a security champions program. So I would truly love to know about that, because I've been working on this program for Snyk for a few months now, and I would love to take your perspective on it. That how have you set up the program, and how it is helping your current organizations, or it has helped your previous organizations, or even your whole journey?
Sure, I think so. I think security champions come much later to the process when we have actually built some rapport with the teams. And by security champions, I meant that when we want to scale the security team in the company, it cannot exponentially scale with what tech team is scaling with, right? And it's a very important point, because engineering teams might grow because business will grow, product will grow, right? And security teams have to scale accordingly. And by what? By that, I mean that, when you create champions within the different teams, and you do after you realize that there are quite a few folks in the company who are really interested in security. And that's when you start leveraging that, because if you start a program by just thinking that you have to do something like that, it will not mature, it will not work out, because then you will start finding people and start forcing them to become a champion and to probably learn security or do something similar. But then when you have already built some repos within the team, you will start realizing that there are folks who are really interested in security. And that's when you hold those guys and make sure they become 10 or 20% part of your team. You basically nurture them, you train them more, and then they become the first point of contact within their own teams, right? And that's when the whole security champions program might be a successful program. And that's what I've seen in past. I think we have learned from our mistakes. Initially, we tend to launch a program just because we had seen this in industry. But then after that, we realized that it will only mature when people are interested, not that we are interested in making them champions, right? I think Prajal will, of course, align to this, but love to hear.
Yeah, of course. As in, we can say this because we have worked on, me and Ankur have worked on this project together, and we share a lot of memories on this, particular project. A lot of learnings. Security Champions is one such program that I will always carry wherever I go. And that I've seen working wonders in a company, because that helps in developing a security culture of a company. that it lays the foundation, right? So to be honest, security is not a first world problem for a developer, right? And we all know that. He is not worried about what secure code he has to write. He's much more worried about making the code work in production. And making security his problem has to be something more innovative than just writing, tooling or giving him certain tools to find security issues or doing pen testing and then bugging him to, fix issues. It has to be much more innovative. And Security Champions was one such vehicle or a mechanism for us to make security interesting in the company. A lot of methods we have used. We have used competitive learning. We have made use of CTF platforms that we can make our developers, be interested in to learn security in a gamified way. These things have worked. To be honest, a lot of efforts that we used to take in this, like classroom trainings, a lot of companies still do that. We have seen those methods not working. We have seen personal connects with our development teams, making them interesting about security, making them learn security in a much more gamified way. It works wonders, and that is one such project I will always carry in my career.
Yeah, totally
Just to
spot
add
on.
to just to add to that, sorry, I'm interrupting Vandana, but just to add to a few points, I think Pradal would remember, or probably that's what we have started a few years back. I think training what is SQL injection or XSS might work with developers. They might be interested in learning how to hack, right? That's what the interest is. They want to learn how to hack. But then when we started to tell them how a hacker's mindset is, how they actually think of a product, when they see the product, when they see a website, when they see a network or something of that sort, right? When they see it, what is that comes into their mind? If that is taught to them precisely, that's when they understand while they even code, when the product document or the product is giving a demo to engineers or developers, they're telling them how to make a product. That's when they can even think of how a hacker would think about this product, right? If somebody has to buy something, how can they actually hack into something else, right? That mindset, if you start teaching people, I think that has made some wonders according to me, because when that is the perspective which a developer has now, instead of just building a product, if they know how to break it also in terms of security, that's when the mindset happens, I think.
Yeah, this is one scary project. If in an utopian world works, right, all security engineers will be jobless. Our developers will be security savvy, and all of us will be losing our jobs.
I would say that's one thing which we are going to cherish, because we are security mindset people. We'll find a way around to find something new, and that's what will keep us going.
That's there.
Yeah. Now, while we are talking about the Security Champions program and bringing them in your experience, Prajal, how much of a shift left is in-house, and how much should we give it to the third-party vendors? Because that's actually the talk of the town, especially with the issues in third-party dependencies, with third-party vendors, to supply chain attacks, which are creeping up big time. So I want to take your inputs on how should we churn this program? How should we set up DevSecOps? And how should we bring in different aspects to it?
It's a fantastic question, Vandana. I feel it has to be a mix of all the three that you have spoken. One being a developer culture, one being shift left security within house, and one being a mix of third-party tooling, right? All three should work in tandem to make the entire process work beautifully. In my experience, I have seen the most difficult being setting up the process itself. And tooling can be, following this process, but setting the process and making sure the company adopts to that process is one of the most difficult tasks that I've seen. I don't want to touch the developer culture part that I think we have already spoken a lot about. But then what is the most important thing here is defining the right security touch points inside your pipeline. Since we are talking about the shift left philosophy, we have to see how many touch points you can have in as close to the development flow itself, right? And providing, or rather empowering developers with the right visibility, security visibility. In my experience, defining a process, if it works, then tooling just follows. We have worked with a lot of vendors, third-party vendors, to get integrated in our pipeline. We have seen false positive here and there. We have seen vendors who can do magic with security, everything, and it is the right touch points, or rather the right gating, which makes sure your pipeline is clean and secure as ever. The model can be either a centralized DevOps model or a decentralized model, but the emphasis has to be on the pipeline, security of the pipeline, and introducing the right touch points. That is what, in my experience, has been working for me.
How about you, Ankur? What has your experience been working with, like in-house security to vendor security to whatnot?
Yeah, I think so. Till now, I don't see a clear answer to this. It's all about, when you enter a company, you figure out various things, you come up with the process. In I think 20% or 30% of the process might fail, and then you redesign the process, because not everything works for every company, right? So for a company like ours, probably who have probably registered users more than or nearly same as the whole US population, the scale at which we work is totally different, right? And few of the open source tools are designed to support very few, sort of scale, very small scale. So to scale a open source tool might be a very big problem. There might be a commercial tool also which might have seen this scale, which might not have seen this scale. So probably it's a good mix of everything, which Prajal has very clearly mentioned, right? But it's a mix of hit and trial. You have to try a few things. You have to try multiple tools to figure out what you need and what will basically scale at your demand. So I think it's very important to just go with the flow, try multiple things, and then figure out what works for you.
I would like to add to this. One of the best ways to implement a shift left philosophy is to start small. Ankur touched upon it very briefly, but that's a very important point. Many companies try and put one process across the entire engineering, and they fail. I've seen that. But if you pick one team, a critical team, a business function, right, and try and solve their problems for DevOps and introduce security touch points there, make a beautiful story out of it, show the ROI, and then you will be surprised to see the other engineering functions adopt to that philosophy very easily, right? We have seen that together, me and Ankur working, companies. We have seen that if one success story on DevSecOps just goes well, where we see less security issues, we see developer pain points being addressed with respect to security, it can just replicate and scale very easily. Replicating security tools which are there in the market with respect to open source, copy pasting it's completely someone's prerogative to do that, but it may not work for all the teams. It cannot just work for all the teams. So copy pasting is something you should refrain from. Try and solve a particular problem for one team and see how it can be replicated to another. If the same process can be replicated, nothing like it.
And probably, as a security team or being part of the engineering team within the company, right? We understand our infrastructure, we understand our code base, or the way we write tool, the way we build tool, right? And because of that, there might be some customizations, or there might be something which is very much required in-house, because all the tools, or probably open source tools or vendors, right? They try and support whatever is general, whatever works for all, right? And there are quite a few tools or vendors, probably, whom we have worked with. They have their tools which we can train. We can train them, right? And they have their tools which we can use, right? And there are quite a few tools or vendors probably whom we have worked with. They are, they have their tools which we can train. right? Which we can customize on our basis, right? So there are a few tools. I think we have worked with vendors who support that, and there are problems like code reviews, which are, I think, a solved problem now, which all the commercial tools have matured a lot now, instead of open source tools. But I think it depends on what will fit in a company. That's the whole point. I think it's not one solution for all.
Beautifully said that there is no one solution for all. Now, while we are dealing with all of these things, there are a lot of questions and things which keep around people's minds, specifically around security operations. So, what do you feel about offloading security operations to a third-party vendor or handling in-house? And now, while I say security operations, because there's a rationale behind it, because people are trying to merge DevSecOps or DevOps with these security operations, like which has been like a two different teams, one from a network perspective, one from an application perspective. So, do you see any merged, any intertwining things between these two teams? I'll start off with you, Ankur.
Okay. So I think from my past experience, Security Operations Center probably is one of the components within security which can work in silos, right? And totally depends on the company if they're comfortable to share logs, data, events to a third party. I think since it's a solved problem, third party can handle it better. But again, depends on the nature of business you are, the nature of data you deal with. Right? Not every company is comfortable sharing all those data with various vendors. So I've seen companies working with in-house security operations center and companies which actually have outsourced. But depends on what headache you want to deal with. If companies are okay to share, I would recommend them to share it, because it's again a big pain point. And it needs a different kind of skill set, which probably DevOps or product security company or the skill set which people have are totally different. So this is one of the things which can totally work in silos.
How about you, Prajal?
Well, I'm a big proponent of having your own security operations team in-house. One of the important reasons is you have to learn security DNA of the company. You have to have your in-house team, right? A lot of companies I have seen, they generally, when they start up, right? These startup companies, they try and outsource security operations to a third party, and when they grow in size, they try and have their own security team, and they build operations. And that, in fact, builds the security culture of the company as well, because a third party will never be able to solve the culture for you. It has to be your in-house security team which does that for you, right? And solving just security vulnerabilities and finding security vulnerabilities can be done by a third party, but then building that kind of a philosophy within the company, making sure such issues don't regress, it has to be an in-house security team, and it works really well. And I believe this is something will be a game changer for India, especially. I believe Indian security ecosystem is hardly 10 to 12-year-old product security ecosystem. Building in-house security teams is going to be the most important thing for startups and product companies going forward.
Can't agree with you more on this, because we do need to set up these things and build up the championship around it. Now, while we are talking about security operations, there's another thing which is actually touching all of us, and especially in the last few months, it has been like really, really critical. So, supply chain. And while I talk about supply chain, there are so many attacks which have happened in the recent past itself. And even though if we say that they're not new, because they have been there with us for a very long time, but now it's picking up fuel big time. So what is your perspective in managing and mitigating the supply chain attacks which are there, using the DevSecOps processes and helping different teams or taking help from different teams? So we'll start with you, Prajal.
Yep. I think supply chain attacks are going to be the next gen attacks for the next 10 years. It will just be worse. because you know the code that you write, but you never know code which is baked into someone and written by someone else, right? And that you end up baking into your own binary and shipping that to production. It's a very dangerous situation to be in. We have seen issues coming up in OpenSSL libraries as well in the past, and the entire world going, mad about it. So uh, I believe getting your own house right with respect to third party or dependencies and libraries, what you call it, it has to be one of the most important steps in the entire shift left philosophy. Getting a third party tool to solve for that particular problem is one of the best ways to go about it, because that kind of a domain cannot be baked or started within a product function in any company. I believe it has to be a specialized function which can be solved only via a third party vendor. uh, Getting what is more in, which is getting into your code, the visibility piece is the most important aspect. And if something is getting solved by a third party vendor, nothing like it. My only advice there would be, never try to reinvent a wheel there which is already solved, right? So get visibility as much as possible with respect to supply chain at very early in the stage.
And is there any specific recommendation that we should go for?
In terms of vendors, there are many. I don't want to be biased towards anyone, but then the companies that I have seen in the past, Black Duck, Snyk, they do fantastic job with respect to finding security issues and dependencies and binaries. It's a solved problem by these companies, and definitely, whenever you build a security pipeline, make sure this is one of the most important aspects to solve. And if you solve this particular problem, in my opinion, I may be talking beyond my merit, 70% of your security issues will be solved.
Yeah, totally agree with you. By managing our software supply chain and being and or making sure that the inventory is properly listed can help a lot. Now, over to you, Ankur. How has your experience been with supply chain attacks or tackling the supply chain issues? Because that's another big challenge. Attacks we are seeing from the world, but then tackling within an organization is another thing.
Yeah, I agree to what Prajal said, and I think with startup community in India, the biggest problem with us is, developers are so free without any processes. They are welcome to choose whatever framework they want to use in building whatever they want, right? And the only priority, the only way for them to choose is how efficient it is, how fast it is, and probably how much good documentation is available, right? Nothing else is the priority. So when they're free to choose any framework, we don't even know if the dependencies of the framework are supported by open source libraries. Is someone actually in the whole world, is someone looking at the dependencies or looking at the code, what these new frameworks are coming with, how much reliable they are, right? So this is one of the biggest problems probably all the startups would face. I think in past what we have done is for all the known frameworks, and I think the known frameworks have matured a lot because of all the bugs they have been receiving till date and all the 0 days people have been able to find. And that's what I think you can also see the pattern in OS top 10 also. There's a big change in how people perceive top 10s, because if you see the difference, that the core technical bugs like injection or XSS or something of that sort have come down the ladder. Injection was first in 2017. Now it's gone to third, right? And the problems like dependencies, problem like configuration management, problems like broken access control have gone up. And this tells you a nice story about how security is maturing in terms of all the known frameworks now are getting matured, and all these basic accesses or SQL injection type of vulnerabilities are coming down. Instead of that, whatever cannot be automated are coming up, which is like access control, problems like configuration, like using components which are built by somebody else. how do you automate that? There's no way to automate it. There has to be somebody who looks at it. Probably even if you do code reviews, there might be cases where you don't have understanding of the code itself, right? So how do you solve that? So I think next 5 to 6 years would be solving that problem. If somebody can solve that, I think that is the next product which probably we'll see growing like anything.
Yeah, I was just coming to you for the similar question, wherein now while we talk about these new vulnerabilities which are actually not automated. So what do you see the future of these bugs? Because they are going to be here and they are the real challenges as per many reports. Talk about the Ponemon Research Institute report, talk about any other organization who's actually doing the research around these bugs. And even now we're talking about OWASP Top 10, which is actually setting up the mark in the industry, and even PCI embeds as part of it. So do you see it getting automated in the near future, or what are the few things that organizations can pick up at the moment? Because this is very fresh and sometimes it's take time for automation to come up. So what are the few things that organizations should start doing to make sure that they are not becoming prone to the attacks which are related to these vulnerabilities or bugs? We'll go with you, Ankur.
Sure. So I think one thing which has helped me in past is if you have a standard way of writing code, writing configs, writing particular validations, right? We can actually automate a few things which we really cannot, because these are the issues which are very, very specific to us. We can solve it in a very specific manner. And we have been able to automate a few issues which nobody in the industry has seen automating. And that's the only reason, because we know what is there in the config. We know how exactly we are validating a few stuff, right? So I think if there is a standard way of having a validation for a specific issue, we can have some sort of validation. But I don't think it's going to happen across the engineering teams, across the companies, right? There is no standard way of writing code. There is no standard way of validating a few stuff. So I'm not sure how to do it, but I think I was lucky enough probably having an engineering team which were very, very hygienic, and that's the reason we were able to actually write automation for a few of the vulnerabilities which have never been automated till now.
Very, very interesting, Ankur. Now, to you, Prajal, I'm sure your experience would have been slightly different, if not totally different, than Ankur in around managing these new vulnerabilities, and they are now heating up a lot of security space. So how has your experience been taking care of these bugs?
So the ones which are really, really difficult to find, the ones which cannot be automated, right, is always a pain to find them. You can only put more eyes to figure out. You can go with different models like a bug bounty model, outsourced security model, your third-party vendor security testing. What you have at hand when you have an in-house security team, it's a very small number, right? And if you cannot automate a particular business functionality security issue, it is very difficult to even put it as a regression test anywhere. So I believe it's just how contextual you can see a particular functionality or an application, right? And if your security team is well versed with all the functionality of the application, nothing like it. And most of the time, in my experience, I've seen something like a bug bounty model work very well, because your bug bounty hunters are very much like an extended security team for you. And they know sometimes the application functionalities very well, right? If not less, a lot of them really dig deep in knowing the functionality, and they are very much up to date with new feature releases, what new code changes have gone, and they know exactly what it is. So getting that visibility also helps from these mechanisms.
Yeah, agree with you on that. Now, last but not the least, the very important question, which always tickles my brain. Prajal, to you, wherein how do you handle the board, or how do you convince the board in giving you the sponsorship for finding the right people, to getting the tools and whatnot? Because security is getting picked up and getting the seat on the table, but still we have a long way to go. So how are you trying to convince the board around it or the leadership around it?
I get your question. I think a lot of us in the same boat. We have seen security budgets being cut down, or rather not in the same lines with other development engineering team budgets. So I believe, and that is something I've learned from my experience. What we miss is basically showing the right ROI to our leadership to get the budget right. We generally say, this is our checklist, give me this budget. For someone who is, security is not the first problem. You cannot convince that this is a checklist and you have to sign off on the checklist because you have to have it. You have to basically look at it in a different approach. You have to work our way around by showing that ROI. And one of the best ways to do that is by introducing right processes, right security visibility, providing that ROI to your board or your management. And I'm sure security is going to be addressed the right way. It will not be put down. It's never a budget issue, is what I think. I think we have approached it historically in a wrong way. We should definitely look at it in an ROI kind of a model, and you will get the right budgets.
Totally with you on that. Now, over to you, Ankur. I do want to take your inputs around your strategies in getting the budget from the board or the leadership team while you being in the leadership position and getting the budget for the security teams or setting up the security teams and tooling.
I think we have to sell it based on the client, right? So each customer is different and you have to deal with all the customers in a different way. So for us, probably one of the customers might be a CTO or a tech team, leader of a tech team, right? So for them, we have to tell them that, it'll save us a lot of time. If you shift left, it'll save us a lot of time for all the releases to go live, right? This is the one analogy which we can sell him. The business head, what we can sell him is, if something goes wrong, the whole reputation or PR or everything or your business will have a great impact, right? And this is how we can sell it to him. And probably for the finance people, I think we have to deal it in a different way, saying that actually we can actually show them how actually we can save the cost if we have a shift left strategy, right? So based on the customers, we have to sell it in a different way.
Yeah, interestingly, yes. Yeah. And especially from the return ROI perspective and selling the right way. Yeah, these two mixes are actually going to get us to the point where we want to reach from the security mindset. And we all have the same goal, where we want the organization to have security and build the tools which they actually need. So building the right tools with the security embedded with it, so that if something happens, we're not blaming any of the teams, be it development teams, operations team, or even the security team. And even, I would say, the whole organization, because when a breach happens, the whole organization gets impacted. Not one person, not two people, not one team, not two teams. So everyone.
And I think specifically in India, in last 2 years, media has played a great role in that. I think we have had a great coverage of all the security breaches happening, and especially in Indian community. And because of this, I think not only leadership within the companies, especially the investors, have become very, very serious about it. So when they probably want to invest in a company, we've seen people actually asking about what is the security posture of the company. So that has helped a lot in especially Indian community, that to bring security onto the table and taking it seriously.
Yeah, that's very, very important point, that people has to take security seriously, or if they don't do, then the repercussions we have seen with the even being a startup or being an enterprise. Yeah. We all have seen that.
Yeah.
Now, before we part ways, I do want to take a piece of advice from each of you around what an organization should do first when they are setting up the whole process, or going ahead with this DevSecOps processes, because the organizations say that, yes, this organization is doing DevSecOps process, we should also do. But then they don't know where to start off. So what is the first thing or your piece of advice to any organization who's going to be taking care of security or who is actually dealing with security at the moment? We'll start with you, Prajal.
Right. Good question. So, as I mentioned earlier, right, in my experience, starting small always works wonders. Identify a critical team, a business function, which is really critical for you, maybe a user path team, right? And then try and learn their DevOps process. I'm sure today, living in an agile development environment, you would be working in a decentralized DevOps model, and try and understand what kind of a pipeline they have, where all you can introduce security touch points, and see for a good time how much of security tooling you can introduce, right? See the ROI, learn from your mistakes with respect to scaling issues of your security tool, how many false positive it generates, make sure there are right security gatings enabled. And then this model can be your star model where you can start replicating it across different teams. Once this is done, you can look at it at a central level where same model can be replicated in a centralized fashion, right? So piece of advice from me would be start small and see the goodness of it.
Over to you, Ankur.
Yeah, so I think I'll apply the same strategy, shift left. And to what Prajal said, start small. I'm shifting a bit more left towards it. I think spend good enough time in understanding the current development process. I think most of the people, when they join the company or they start a fresh new security, when they want to introduce DevSecOps, we tend to forget that there is a current process. There is a process which the current members of the company are dealing with. We cannot just barge in and bring in our processes, right? So understand what is the current process, spend good enough time there, right? And then probably ask them or start building small, which Prajal told, right? Come up with a process which doesn't shift a big, there's no big shift in what is the current process, right? So basically you have to be part of the current process, and that's what most of the people forget. I think rest of the points Prajal have actually mentioned quite precisely.
Yeah, absolutely. Start small and actually think of the perspectives and the teams which they already have the processes. And the most important part, that look at holistically what we currently have. Training teams and vendors, which is equally important. And security is all about building trust. However, keeping the zero trust is mine, because never trust, always verify when you're setting up all of these processes to make sure that you are secure. Thank you so much, Prajal and Ankur, for joining me today. It was wonderful to have both of you.
Likewise, same here, Vandana. Thank you. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you so much.